Shedeur Sanders, Davis Mills, Tyrod Taylor. We'll tell you which free agent quarterback that you want to pick up and put into your fantasy lineups next.
You are Locked On Dynasty Football, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Welcome back to the Locked On Dynasty Football Podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We are now the #1 sports podcast network, and today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. Welcome back. I am your host, Marcus Mosher. He is the Fantasy Football Hall of Famer, Michael Fabiano, and on today's show, we're running through all of the top waiver wire picks going into Week 12. I can't believe we're already into Week 12. It's absolutely insane. But let's talk about the quarterback position to start, Fabs, because there's quite a few options out there if you need a guy. We can talk about like Jacoby Brissett, who just set the all-time completions record. Joe Flacco is still out there in some leagues, but I want to start with some big name guys. And the first is Shedeur Sanders, who's likely going to start against the Raiders. Any chance that you're starting Shedeur this week?
4 teams off, matchup against the Raiders. Probably not unless it's super flex. I mean, I did not see much. It was a very small sample size last week. I did not see much. It was also a tough defense that he was facing. The Raiders, not so tough. Although I would say this, I might stream the Raiders defense against Shedeur Sanders. I mean, listen, like this guy, he didn't fall into the 5th round for no reason. Like he was, 4th on the depth chart at one point before the Browns, either lost quarterbacks or traded them away. And so now I'm not going to, come out there and be like, well, Shedeur Sanders, it's going to be great for NFL media purposes because everyone's going to be all in on it. And I think it's funny that he's playing the Raiders, which will be his first start because, the whole thing with the Raiders and, maybe they could have gotten him, et cetera. And they were talking about, will Deion Sanders be the coach and will Shedeur go to Las Vegas? All that kind of fun stuff. And, I mean, even in redrafts, I don't know if I want him. Right? I mean, I'd rather have Davis Mills, to be honest with you. And I don't even know that I love Davis Mills this week against Buffalo. The matchup's not great. I'll say this. If I'm getting a quarterback off the waiver wire this week, it's definitely Jacoby Brissett, who you mentioned has been just absolutely on fire. And remember, he did that last week. No Marvin Harrison Jr. So he doesn't need his top wide receiver to put up big numbers. And they've got Jacksonville this week. So that would be the guy that I would want. And I'd probably also want Bryce Young over him. Bryce Young is available in a lot of redraft leagues. Mm-hmm. Hell, maybe even Tyler Shuck against Atlanta. Maybe I want him over Shedeur Sanders this week. And remember, Kirk Cousins is now going to be the Atlanta Falcons quarterback for the rest of the season. And I know that Marcus was going to make a face like he just ate a jar of pickles because he hates Kirk Cousins. But I don't know that I wouldn't want Kirk Cousins against New Orleans over Shedeur Sanders against the Raiders this week.
I can't envision me starting Kirk Cousins in any league. He just looks so done. And with no Drake London this week, no thanks.
No, I get it.
I wanted to go back through some of the other names. Davis Mills, who plays the Bills this week on Thursday Night Football. I actually don't hate this matchup. I mean, we saw Baker Mayfield throw the ball all over Buffalo last week. Tua actually had a pretty good game. Why not Davis Mills this week if you need a quarterback?
Well, I mean, so if you look at the Bills defensively against quarterbacks, it's not a really good matchup, and me, dude, I'm all about, the stats. And not for nothing, but Baker Mayfield did not have a big game Sunday. It was ho-hum. It was, 15, 16 fantasy points.
Well, it's just the Tampa Bay scored a bunch of points in that game.
Right, and I get it. But, right, so that's why I'm thinking, I mean, I don't know if I love him. He's been good. I mean, two weeks ago, he was a top quarterback in fantasy football. This past week, he was okay. It wasn't great against the Titans, and they only scored, what was it, 16 points, 13 points. So it wasn't like they put up, a huge stat line. For me, it's more about like, how does he affect Nico Collins? And Nico Collins had a really good game, and I don't have any issues with Nico against Buffalo. So, and just Mills has more experience. I mean, he was a starter for a while in Houston during the down years.
He's a good backup. He's a very good backup.
He's a good backup. Exactly. He's a good He's kind of like JJ McCarthy. He's a good backup. I had you open the door and I had to throw it in there.
This
Man.
is a real quick aside, but the NFL needs more quarterbacks like Davis Mills, like the guys that are just like good backup quarterbacks that they get into the game and it's not a disaster. I do think we're getting more. It feels like, I mean, Jameis Winston's one, Davis Mills, Jacoby Brissett, but we just need more of these guys that can function when they get into the game.
Flacco. I mean,
Yeah.
he really, is for all intents and purposes was a backup for the majority of the, the last 4 or 5 years. I mean, look at Marcus Mariota. I mean, the Commanders are off this week, but if you can add him and stash him, maybe you already have a quarterback for this week. Like Mariota's been decent. He's not a terrible quarterback. And he's going to start a bunch of games because Jaden Daniels is on injured reserve. So, those are another, and again, I make a joke about JJ McCarthy. He's also out there too in the redrafts, but I'm just not touching him with a 39.5-foot pole. No, thank you.
Nice little Christmas reference there. What about Tyrod Taylor, who is getting the start for the Jets this week? It sounds like this is going to be a long-term thing. He's going to finish out the season as long as he can stay healthy. Is Tyrod Taylor somebody that you want in your fantasy lineups?
In Superflex, maybe. Dude, he's playing the Ravens. Ravens defense, that's the play for me. No Garrett Wilson. Their wide receiver group is maybe the most unimpressive in the entire NFL. It's if not, it's the least impressive. It's definitely one of the top 3 least impressive. So I don't love Tyrod at all, and the matchup is brutal. As you mentioned, the Ravens defense has been playing better in the last month or so, and this is a game that, listen, the Ravens, they're in a battle to win that division. So I don't know that they're going to play down to their opponent. So I don't love.
They did last week.
I know. This is a home game though, and that was a divisional game on the road. So
I think the Ravens will win that one, but Tyrod Taylor's interesting going up against his former team. I think, as you mentioned, he's 36, and I don't know if we think of Tyrod Taylor as a 36-year-old quarterback.
Yeah,
but the mobility is, I don't think it's quite there. The last time he was like a full-time starter, but I wouldn't be surprised if he uses his legs enough to be fantasy relevant, and if he makes a couple more plays in the passing game, just to give you that kind of 12, 13 point floor against super flex. I don't mind Tyrod this week.
That's probably the only place that I would play him. So funny story. Remember that league that I told you about, the Dynasty League, that it makes me mental? Well, I have one of the best teams in that league, and my quarterbacks are a bunch of it's not good. So I ended up having to trade a first-round pick to get Matthew Stafford because I want to win the damn league, and my quarterbacks are not good. I just traded Mac Jones to get Tyrod because I have Justin Fields. So I mean, unfortunately, sometimes desperate, time calls for desperate measures. And so I'm going to end up playing Tyrod Taylor this week, but I'm only playing him in Superflex. I just don't love anything about. There's nothing that I could say positive about the situation that he's in right now, whether it's the team around him or the matchup against Baltimore.
But this is fantasy football. If you go back and you look at your previous year's champions, a lot of times they'll have guys that either weren't on NFL rosters or were, third stringers to start the year.
Bro,
and we're playing matchups. That's what fantasy is.
I won a fantasy championship 1 year with Matt Moore as my quarterback in the championship.
Former Cowboy great Matt Moore.
He wasn't great, but he was playing for the Dolphins at the time.
Yeah. All right, let's talk about some running backs that you can pick up in your fantasy leagues and hopefully score some points in week 12. We'll get to that next. This episode is brought to you by FanDuel. The NBA's back, and there's not a better place to get in on the action than FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Even if you miss the start of the game, or if you just want to ride the hot hand, FanDuel has live bets on everything from who will score the next bucket to fourth quarter comebacks. Plus, you can even combine your live bets into a same game parlay for a shot at a bigger payout. It keeps every game exciting, especially when your team's making that late game push. I know for me, I love that we're getting football almost every single day here late in November, but we also have got basketball every day. So there's always something fun and exciting to bet on with FanDuel. And right now, new customers can get $300 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. So head over to FanDuel.com to sign up and play your game with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Welcome back to the Locked On Dynasty Football Podcast. We'd like to thank you for making us your first listen of the day. We'd also like to thank you for making us the #1 sports podcast network. Fabs, let's talk about some running backs. It's really hard to find running backs at this time of year that are actually going to be startable, right? But are there a couple of names out there that are at least intriguing to you?
Yeah, there are. And honestly, like for week 12, there's actually a decent number of running backs that you may be able to pick up and start this week. And, Ken Gainwell's on that list. We don't know what's going on with Tyler Warren. He got injured.
Jalen Warren. I got you.
Jalen Warren. He got injured last week. And it was Gainwell who scored all the points that we were hoping that Warren was going to score for our fantasy teams. So, Gainwell is going to be worth an ad. Obviously, Sean Tucker's going to be worth an ad. Even though Rachaad White continues to start for the Buccaneers, Tucker's been the better running back over the last couple of weeks. He had 3 touchdowns last week. Now, this is obviously all it all depends on what happens with Bucky Irving. But Bucky, we don't know if he's going to be back this week to face the Rams. So Sean Tucker's a guy that you could pick up and play this week, assuming Bucky is out. Chris Rodriguez, I know the Commanders are off, but I'm still going to pick him up and stash him because he started. He led the team in backfield snaps and touches and fantasy points, and he averaged over 5 yards a carry against Miami, so he's worth an ad. Bam Knight's floating around out there in some redrafts as well. He had 14.5 points last week, and so again, you're looking for like warm bodies who are touching the football.
Bam Knight. We should mention real quick for the Cardinals. DeMarcado is going to miss, I think, the next 4 weeks with a high ankle sprain. Michael Carter still in the equation. We'll see about Trey Benson if he ever comes back. But I think Bam Knight is somebody that you can start with a lot of confidence over the next month.
And then finally is Emmanuel Wilson, and he's going to be a huge pickup off the waiver wire. Josh Jacobs' knee is not seriously injured. I believe it's a bone bruise or a bruise of some kind. So I don't know if he's playing this week. And they've got Minnesota. I'm not saying it's like the best matchup in the world, but volume. And so Emmanuel Wilson's also going to be a very popular ad. And I'll go through some others here, Marcus.
Can we do Emmanuel Wilson real quick? Because I want to talk about him. So I covered Josh Jacobs when he was with the Raiders. He's got a knee issue that's going to be kind of hurting him for the rest of his career, right? So sometimes for him, it's a real struggle just to get to game day. I don't know how he does it. Like, I don't know how he can get his body from what you see like on Wednesday, Thursday on the field ready for Sunday action. I don't think he's going to play this week. And then the Packers have a quick turnaround. They play on Thanksgiving against the Lions.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be surprised if the Packers hold him out for that 2-game stretch because he's not 100% healthy. And again, if you can get Emmanuel Wilson, who's basically taking 100% of the work when Jacobs is out, to me, he's the top guy I want this week.
Yeah, and in redrafts, he's one of the most available among the running backs that I just mentioned. So you could go out there and get him. So a few other guys, Tajay Spears is still floating around out there. Tyler Algiers out there. Devin Singletary scored 2 touchdowns last week. The Giants don't have a great matchup this week, though. But, Singletary's getting touches. Bashal Tootin had a very good game, but he got hurt. So we've got to keep tabs on his status. Jaleel McLaughlin, if you want to go a little bit deeper, scored a touchdown last week for the Broncos. And then don't forget about Ollie Gordon. Like, if you have Devon Achane, you need to have Ollie Gordon on your team. And if you have a deep roster, you could also pick him up and just stash him. I know the Dolphins are on a bye this week, but this is also a very important time, folks, where you need to make sure that you got the handcuffs for your top backs. And that includes a guy like Devon Achane, who's, one of the elite running backs in the league. You need to have a guy like Gordon. If he's out there and you have Achane, pick him up.
What our friend Sigmund Bloom always talks about at this time of year, you could start shedding some of those flex receivers, the guys that get you 10, 11 points a game in favor of some of these backup running backs on high powered offenses, because those guys are way more likely to help you out in the fantasy football playoffs than the Texans' number 3 receiver. Right. So I think Ollie Gordon is a perfect example of that. If Devon Achane misses any time, Gordon is locked and loaded as an RB2. I think Jaleel McLaughlin, same thing. Like, if RJ Harvey goes down with a groin injury for a week, McLaughlin is going to get a ton of touches. Tyler Algiers is maybe the best example of this. And we should talk about the Falcons real quick, because Drake London out this week with a PCL injury. Michael Penix out for the season. Atlanta's been one of these offenses that we've kind of just relied on to give us consistent fantasy production week in and week out. How do we view the Falcons kind of going forward into the fantasy football playoffs?
I'm concerned that Drake London won't be back for the next few weeks. He is week to week. You don't want to hear that, especially at this time of the year when he is, really one of the top end wide receivers in fantasy football, and you may not have him. And there's no one to replace him. I mean, Darnell Mooney, he's even a little bit nicked up. So I guess this is a good thing for Kyle Pitts in terms of his targets. But, Kyle Pitts, he drives us nuts every single season, every single week. And so is there a Falcon in the passing game that I would start this week? I'm not sure that there is outside of Pitts, and I don't feel 100% confident in him. So, the Falcons offense could be in a lot of trouble. I guess the good news is, Bijan's going to get a ton of work. And you mentioned Algier, and I talked about him as a pickup. Maybe Algier gets more bored. Maybe Atlanta starts leaning on the run a little bit more to make up for the fact that they've lost Drake London, make up for the fact that Darnell Mooney's been sort of non-existent this year and he's been banged up. That Falcons offense now could also end up being subject to the defensive matchups when it comes to streaming defenses.
Yeah.
So, listen, New Orleans' defense is not great by any stretch of the imagination, but would I stream them this week against Atlanta, against Kirk Cousins without Drake London? You bet your bottom dollar I would if I need help.
This offense is going to be tough to watch. They were so much fun over the last couple of weeks, but without London, without Penix, don't expect much here.
When you talk about, we're talking about Dynasty, I believe this is the 4th or 5th season-ending injury that Michael Penix has suffered. Not a guy that I want in Dynasty. I just don't. That is, you want to talk about, Joe Burrow being a guy who's not durable. Michael Penix Jr. has not been durable in his career dating back to, when he was a youngster, right, in college.
Mm-hmm.
And now, again, going out for the season with a knee injury, that's a big problem. And that was the big bugaboo with Penix coming into his NFL career, was that injuries have been an issue, especially with the knees.
Real quick, I want to go back to Sean Tucker really quickly because you're right. He looked fantastic against Buffalo. 3 touchdowns, 34 fantasy points. Bucky Irving will be back eventually, whether it's this week or next week. We don't know. Do you think Sean Tucker is going to impact Bucky Irving's dynasty value? Like, is he too good to keep off the field? Or is it when Bucky gets back, he's just getting right, all those touches that he got before he was injured?
I don't see any reason why Sean Tucker would impact Bucky's value. Bucky was the featured back in the back half of his rookie year, and going into this year, I don't think things are going to change. I really don't. Maybe Sean Tucker usurps Rashad White as the handcuff, and maybe White.
Tucker's good. Like, he's a legitimate good running back.
But he was good last year. He's been good this year. He just doesn't play when that backfield is at full strength. So I think the best hope that you have is that he jumps Rashad White as the handcuff for Bucky Irving. I just don't see Bucky Irving losing that featured role and getting Wally pipped.
Nice reference. All right, let's talk about some wide receivers that you can pick up in your fantasy leagues and play in week 12. We'll get to that next.
Today's show is brought to you by our friends over there at Peloton. Look, folks, it's time to break through the busiest time of the year with a brand new Peloton cross-training Tread Plus that's powered by Peloton IQ. It's Peloton's most elevated technology and equipment yet that gives you real-time guidance, and it gives you endless ways to move, whether you want to work out by yourself or if you want to work out with your favorite instructor, like my personal favorite, Alex Toussaint. He always gets me fired up to tackle the day. And the thing I like about Peloton, it helps me achieve more in less times. They have features that help you plan, stay motivated, track your progress, and Peloton IQ also provides personalized workout plans and recommendations. That's something that I use right now during the busiest time of the year covering the NFL. They plan my workouts for me based on my mood, my vibe, and also my favorite instructors. So make sure you check it out and use it, because it also helps you correct your form in real time, and it maximizes your reps. It counts your reps so that you can do it smarter, safer, and more efficient. Let yourself run, lift, flex, push, and go. Explore the new Peloton cross-training Tread Plus at onepeloton.com.
Welcome back to the Locked On Dynasty Football Podcast. We'd like to thank you for making us your first listen of the day. For your second listen, check out the Locked On NFL Podcast. 2 shows every single day, 1 in the morning with Tyler Rowland, 1 in the afternoon with Tony Wiggins, available wherever you get your podcasts. All right, Fabs, let's talk about some wide receivers, because of all the positions, I think this is the one where you can pick up some players that can really help you right away. I think we have to start with Alec Pierce, who was off in week 11, but if he's still available in your leagues, I think now is the time to go pick him up. The Colts have got a bunch of games coming up against some high-powered offenses. Now is the time to do it.
Yeah, I use ownership percentages over on Sleeper to determine whether or not I'll put a player in the waiver wire column over at Sports Illustrated, and I don't put anybody who's owned in more than 60% of leagues. Pierce's ownership percentage didn't change. Like he's still out there. It's about 40% on Sleeper. And I mean, look at his numbers: 14 plus points in 3 of his last 4 games, double-digit targets in 2 of those games. A.D. Mitchell is long gone, so Alec Pierce is definitely the wide receiver that I want to pick up as my priority. But Michael Wilson is also right there. We don't know when Marvin Harrison Jr. is coming back from that appendicitis. And last week, and I will say this, no one saw that coming. 185 yards and 33.5 fantasy points. The Niners defense, very vulnerable to perimeter receivers. Keep that in mind. This week, they've got Tet McMillan on Monday night. So you're going to start him with confidence. We may even talk about that on Friday. So Michael Wilson is a player that you can pick up. Greg Dortch, also a player that you can pick up off of that team. A guy that I talked about on the Sunday morning show with Michelle. Michelle loved Wilson, and I was in on Dortch, and they both had very good games. Christian Watson had 2 touchdowns last week. Maybe I'm chasing the points a little bit there, but no Tucker Kraft. Romeo Dobbs is banged up, so Christian Watson is also a player that you can grab off the wire.
Real quick on Watson.
Yeah.
He's starting to look healthy again. I mean, he played, against the Steelers and made a couple of plays, but he's starting to look like that player that we saw back in 2022, 2023.
Mm-hmm.
You're starting to see Jordan Love trust him more. Of all the names in this list, he's probably the one that I'm the most excited about. And in Dynasty leagues, you can actually still get him pretty cheap. He signed an extension before the year, so he's still under contract through the 2026 season. And with all of the injuries that Green Bay has at receiver and at tight end, I just won't be surprised if Watson continues to get more and more opportunities. And last thing, Fabs, is go look at that Packers schedule over the next 6 games. They are going to be playing a lot of really good offenses, including the Lions. They play the Bears twice. I think the Packers are going to have to throw the ball. Watson is somebody that I feel very comfortable starting every week. It's a flex play.
And let's hope that gets to that point, because Watson's really failed to meet expectations outside of his rookie year. Had, I think, 9 touchdowns. And since then, he's just been hurt constantly. So if he can stay healthy, I think he can help fantasy managers make an impact this season. And the rest of the guys, I mean, they're not massive names. We mentioned Darnell Mooney, but Darnell Mooney's banged up. Jaden Higgins has been more involved in the Texans offense. Do I want to play him against the Bills? I don't know, but there's 4 teams on a bye. Speaking of the Patriots, Mac Hollins. He's out there. He might be out there in Dynasty. I mean, he's been pretty good the last 3-4 weeks. Pat Bryant's on a bye this week, but he's worth a look. And we don't know what's going on with Keon Coleman. I would assume that he's not going to be benched this week because I think the Bills made their point last week. But Tyrell Shavers was the best wide receiver that Buffalo had. We all thought it was going to be Khalil Shakir. It was not. It was Tyrell Shavers. So a player that now should certainly be owned in Dynasty. Xavier Legate is also another player who had a good game last week. Worth a speculative ad. Don't know that I'd start him. And then this one here is kind of a little under the radar, but Isaiah Hodgins in New York. Mm-hmm. He was the lead wide receiver. Now, Wan'Dale Robinson had, I think, 9 targets, but it's a different quarterback. And sometimes when a quarterback comes in, he's practiced with like dudes who are backups. And so Hodgins and Winston may have a little something going on there. I don't know. Would I play Hodgins this week? No. If I'm in a deeper league or a dynasty league, would I pick him up? If I need help at wide receiver, I think I would. Theo Johnson only had 4 targets last week. And so you start to wonder, does this hurt Theo more than we thought? And does Hodgins all of a sudden become somewhat fantasy relevant? We'll find out. They've got Detroit this week, so they're going to get their butts handed to them, which means negative game script and a lot of passing in the second half of that game at Ford Field. So maybe Hodgins is a deep sleeper type, Marcus.
To me, he is if Jameis is the quarterback. Who knows? I think the expectation is that Jackson Dart will be ready. But if you're the Giants, what's the rush? Like, why try to rush Dart back onto the field in what is a lost season where you're going to have a new coaching staff anyways? Make sure he's 100% healthy and let Jameis go out there and sling it. Let's talk about some tight ends really quickly before we head out. Juwan Johnson, I think probably a lot of people dropped him because the Saints were on bye in week 11. Is now the time to pick him up?
Yes. No, and look at, I mean, 4 straight games of double digits. Like guys like Juwan Johnson, I talked about Theo Johnson last week, although he had a stinker, new quarterback. Tyler Shough certainly has a rapport with Johnson. He had a decent rapport with Rattler as well. But I mean, he's the number 2 wide receiver, or at least receiver in that offense, right? I mean, Juwan Johnson is a very good player, very good pass catcher. And it's Olave one, who I love Olave this week. And Johnson's right there as a startable asset. He's in my top 10 tight ends for this week. Some other players, Dalton Schultz is still floating around out there. He's got the Bills this week. Not a good matchup, but he had a good game last week. And he's had a couple of good games in a row. Brenton Strange has got to be getting close to coming back, right? I mean, he's got to be getting close. So he could be worth a speculative ad. And while I don't love AJ Barner this week, the matchup's not great against Tennessee. They don't typically give up a lot of points to tight ends. He had 10 catches last week. Like, it was so funny. In one of my leagues, I'm literally like desperately trying to replace him in my starting lineup, and I did. And the guy that I put him in did nothing, and Barner went off. Sometimes you overthink yourself.
No Darnell Washington, who's starting to get more work in Pittsburgh.
I did. After last week, I have like Steelers tight ends PTSD. I just don't know who the hell is going to be the guy every single week. And so, like, honestly, like, I mean, Washington had a good game last week, but is it that thing is a nightmare? It's a headache. I dipped my toe into it last week, and I got burned. Let's put it that way. So I'm not going with the Steelers tight ends. I'd still rather have Jonnu or Freiermuth over Washington.
All right, that is it for today's show. We would like to thank you for making us your first listen every single day. Check out the channel on YouTube. Download the podcast wherever you get your podcasts. We are free and available on all platforms. Follow Fabs on Twitter at Michael_Fabiano. I'm at Marcus_Mosher, and we'll see you guys right back here tomorrow.